Welcome to everyone. Unfortunately, our mystery guest was unable to make it. He is from the States, and it is a COVID issue. COVID has struck his house. However, he has promised us our own makeup session in January. The only way you will hear about it is through the What's Next email list. So please stay on it. I'm not going to be putting it out again through Nano channels. It's only going out through that email list. And if you think I have time to spam you, I promise you, I don't.
She doesn't even blog. What makes you think you're going to spam people, honestly?
Well, they don't know that, but thank you for telling them. So anyway, yeah, I don't even spam the people who sign up for my blog. If they're lucky, they get 3 or 4 blogs a year. So if I don't even spam them, you think I'm really going to have time to spam you guys? I don't think so. All right.
Kia ora, people. Wonderful. Kia ora. Okay, I'm probably going to have to explain that one to anyone who doesn't understand. So we have a few people that have come in from New Zealand, and they're all going kia ora. And that is actually it's a Māori Pacific Island greeting of hello, how are we? And there's a few more. For those who don't know, we are recording tonight. So unless you want to be in the YouTube video, you might want to kill your camera.
Yeah, and whoever just joined, I killed your camera quickly for you, and please mute your microphone if it's not already muted. That way we don't get background noises.
Yeah, it does help. Okay, so, Anne, what are we doing?
First, I want to say thank you, Judy, for agreeing to this, and she was not the mystery guest for anybody who thought she was, because I asked her way back in October or early November, somewhere in there. It seems like 3 lifetimes ago now, darling.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But anyway, so Judy, we just finished either the first draft of a manuscript or at least 50,000 words of a manuscript. What do we do now?
Okay, so we are basically talking today about what the next steps of our drafting and what our processes are. And the first thing to understand is that 50,000 words may not be the end of your manuscript. If you're writing things like fantasy or science fiction, you're probably looking more closer to 100 to 120,000 words. So you may not have hit the end. In fact, you haven't even finished drafting your manuscript until you've written those 2 coveted little words, the end. And then you better be celebrating, because that is a massive achievement. A lot of people go through and they say, oh, I want to write a book, I want to do bits and pieces, but guess what? They don't, because they don't actually get off their derrieres and actually do things. But there is a definite life cycle to a book. Now I'm going to just share my screen here for a second, assuming I can get this to work. Share. Right. I can no longer see the chat, so I don't know. So I'm just wanting to make sure, can everybody see my screen? I can't see the chat, so somebody's going to have to just tell me yes or no.
Screen, and I'm getting chat pop-ups, yes.
Fantastic. So everyone can see my screen. That's great. So basically what we've got within our cycle of the book is we have just the concept, and we've taken it into its first draft. So we have gone through at least this portion of it in theory. We might still be writing that first draft depending on where you are within your bits and pieces, but that's okay. After that, you are going to want to put it into that metaphorical drawer for at least 2 weeks. If you can do it longer, great, because you need distance. The more distance you can give yourself from the first draft to the rest of your manuscript, the better off you are. And what you're going to do is you're going to move into what we call the developmental editing phases. Now, this developmental editing phase is where you are literally knocking it into shape. You are changing your plot around, you're looking at your characters, you're looking at your voice, your show versus tell, your dialogue, all of these other bits and pieces. I suppose that a good way to think of this is that let's just use a fitness analogy. You know, I think most of us know, you know, we've had these conversations of various different things of where we thinking we might go to the gym or yeah, right. I know. A few of us like, yeah, no, not going to happen. But that developmental editing phase is taking the pudding that we are in when we first start going to the gym, and we are knocking it into place. From there, once we've done this developmental editing bits and pieces, and hello, we need more people to come in. All right, so before we carry on with other bits and pieces, where we go from here is we go into what we know as the copy editing phase. And this is what most people tend to think of as editing. So this is when we are looking at the punctuation and grammar. And do I need to say it again? No? We're having fun. All right, so we've had a few people just coming into the room a little bit late, and that's cool, not cool. Unless you want to be in the YouTube video, kill those cameras, guys. Really do, kill those cameras. All right, carrying on. We can be sidetracked. We can cope with this. Copy editing phase is what most people tend to think of as editing. So you're looking at your wording choices, you're looking at your punctuation, your grammar, those sorts of things. But it's on the surface. And sometimes what can happen is you actually enter into the copy editing phase before you're ready, and you have to go back. So that's why this in the middle has got an arrow going back the other direction. Sometimes you have to go back to the developmental editing. Now, there is another analogy that I can think of about developmental editing versus copy editing. And that is, like I sort of talked about briefly about the fitness training, but your developmental editor could be your personal fitness trainer. They're the type of people that are going through and helping you knock everything into shape, helping you make it better, helping you become more fit, more comfortable with your language choices, with your story, and helping you actually knock everything into shape. Where a copy editor would possibly be a good analogy might be your beauty pageant coach, where everything they do is on the surface. They're helping you pick the right dress, they're helping you put the right makeup, do the right hair, helping you learn how to say things, to answer the right questions so you don't look like an idiot. That sort of thing. And it's a different level. They're not doing anything on the surface. Everything they're doing is on the surface. If they're wanting the deeper stuff, they'll hire somebody to come in and be your personal trainer. So after the copy editing phase, we have a proofreader, or the proofreading phase. And this is where your manuscripts are being typeset, they're getting ready to go for print. And I really need to stress this. A proofreader or proofreading is on the typeset document. This is the document that is going to be published. So it's your last chance to find any of the typos or any of the mistakes that have slipped through. You do not want to be making major structural changes, because at this point it's too late. And then from there, it finds the stores. And it doesn't matter whether you're looking at the self or the trad route. This is pretty much the life cycle of a book. Okay. Did I miss anyone? Is there anything does that make sense to everyone where I'm not racing ahead? I'm just making sure. I can't see my chat now, so.
I don't see any questions in chat, so I'd say move forward.
Fantastic. Okay.
You can still put questions in chat. We will get to them all, well, as many as possible at some point. So
Definitely.
think of something in 10 minutes, pop it in chat, and at an appropriate time, it'll be brought up.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to all the questions. All right. I did want to point out things like the critique partners and beta readers and editors and the other people that get involved in your manuscript, because when you're writing your manuscript, it's pretty much just you and your own imagination. It is a solitary practice, but turning that manuscript into something that is worth reading, it takes a community, it takes a group of people, because it doesn't matter how good of a writer you think you are. It really doesn't. You could be Stephen King, or you could be Brandon Sanderson, or you could be anyone of the big named top writers out there. Even they have a community helping them, because sometimes what you think you put on the page is not what is actually on the page. A good example I can give you of that is from one of my own manuscripts that I'm currently querying. I'm sending out the door. And yes, I use an editor myself. I do hire a developmental editor myself. When I sent the manuscript to him, I thought I had it all pretty clear as to what the timeline was for my manuscript. And when I got the comments back, he was confused, because he thought everything that was happening in the manuscript happened over a period of only 4 days, or days, matter of maybe weeks tops. But what was happening in the manuscript was over a matter of 4 months. And I had this very deliberately set out to be over the course of months. And he was like, yeah, no, that didn't come across. And so I had to go back through everything and telegraph properly the passage of time. But I wouldn't have picked that up if somebody else didn't read my manuscript. Somebody else had to see it for that to happen, because what I thought was there wasn't there. And that's why you need another set of eyes. No, you do not need to hire a developmental editor. That's going to sound really, really funny and odd, because I am a developmental editor. That is what I do. But no, you do not need to hire one.
I love you, Judy. You're not afraid to refer people to free and or cheap options.
Yeah, I am well aware that everybody has got a budget and not everybody can afford editing. Editing is very expensive. If you are self-publishing, you need to consider putting aside thousands of dollars for editing. And I'm not kidding there. That's a mild estimate. It's thousands of dollars. And you are probably talking only going to be using a copy editor. A developmental editor is going to be the one that's going to help you knock it into shape, but there is other options available to you that are a lot cheaper, and I will always recommend these over a developmental editor anyway, and that's using a critique partner or beta readers. They are different things. They are very different things. So a critique partner, the best analogy I can give you is an alpha tester for software. So they're the type of person that is expecting bugs, lots and lots and lots of bugs. But their job is to help you find those bugs and fix them. So a critique partner is there to help you see where you've got plot holes. They're to help you see your characterization's not working quite right, or they're going to help you work out those sorts of things.
So the best critique partner is another writer.
Yeah, exactly. So the best critique partner is another writer. And in fact, I would always recommend that your critique partners are other writers, because they know the mechanisms, they know how it works, they know those sorts of aspects. Your beta readers are going to be like your beta testers for software. They're getting software that is, yeah, okay, it might have a bug in it, but they're putting it through its paces. They're going to be using it like an actual end user is going to use it, and they're going to be trying to break it. And if they can't, fantastic. That's what a beta reader's for, is they're reading exactly what the end reader is going to see. And if something trips them up, it needs to be caught. It needs to be caught before it gets to that next phase. So
Now,
your
question.
beta readers, yes?
When I send it to the beta reader, does it have to be exactly typeset bound and everything like the end
No.
user, or could it be a Word document or PDF or something else I can create?
Yeah, it can be. So when you're sending it to your beta readers, it is whatever Word document or a Mobi file if you've got the ability. Like, so I use Scrivener, and I know you use Scrivener as well. If you have the ability to create a Mobi file or an EPUB file, you can send that out. You can send PDFs out. When it's going to your beta readers, it's whatever format you are comfortable sending them. When it's going to your critique partners, I would be working out with your critique partner what format they would prefer, because you want a format that comments can come back in. So when there's a section not working, they can highlight it. And Word is one of the better formats to be using, but not everybody has Word. So talk to your critique partner. And I had one the other day that I sent the comments back in a PDF. PDF does have the ability to highlight things, and I still sent the comments back that way. So you can check with different versions. The typeset version, there is another type of reader that you have, which is your ARC reader. So ARC stands for Advanced Reader Copy, and that is the reader that is getting the typeset, the one that's going for, say, the proofreader. It's already typeset, it's ready to go out the door, it's the last checks, but your ARC reader, hopefully, will leave a review. And that's why they're called ARC readers, because they're getting the reviews before it's been released, advanced reader copy, so they can leave the reviews. Not all ARC readers will leave reviews, but most of the time they do. Okay, so somebody was just asking, what does ARC stand for? It stands for Advanced Reader Copy, ARC. Does that make sense? Yeah? Cool. I think that makes sense. Okay. Beta readers. They can be anyone. They can be your family and friends if you really, really want them. Critique partners. You want somebody with that critical eye. You really, really, really do. You want someone who can actually say, no, this isn't working, maybe you can try this, and give you suggestions on how to improve it. So that's why writers are better at being critique partners. One of the other reasons why I will always advocate for critique partners before hiring a developmental editor is that I strongly believe that if you are in your early stages of learning how to write and you're learning your craft, you will learn more and faster by actually reading somebody else's work, by providing that feedback. Because you start to see you're not connected emotionally to that writing. A writer, our stories are our babies. Let's put it like it is. They are our babies. And it's very upsetting when somebody doesn't like our baby. We get very upset. And if you want to have that distance, it helps if you're actually reading somebody else's work. And I have found that by reading somebody else's work, you can sometimes see things in your own writing. For example, say somebody's using a lot of dialogue tagging, where they're using a lot of he saids or she crooned or whatever. They're using a lot of those tags. It's annoying. It's frustrating. And when you see it, you can suddenly go, oh, yeah, that's why it's annoying. Okay, now I understand. And I know I had that when I was first learning as well. Somebody had actually commented on my stuff saying, I have this habit, and I know it's a habit of mine, where I tend to show and tell. So I will show a statement or show a scene, and then I'll tell you it as well. Or I'll do it the other way around. I do both in the same, within same proximity. It's like, oh,
And
oops.
my favorite bad habit, first word in every paragraph will be name of character. Kate J, President Kate J, President Sean, Kate J, President Bill.
Yeah. But it's annoying. It is really annoying. But until you see it in somebody else's writing, it suddenly goes, oh, that's why it's annoying. And I think you learn more and faster by critiquing somebody else's work. And that's part of the reason why I will always advocate for critique partners over hiring editors.
Okay,
Right?
I have a couple questions here. We have one, can you clarify the role of a copy editor? And in the same vein is, do you use line editors? If yes, at what stage? And can you clarify what is a line editor?
Okay. So the role of any editor, to put it blunt, is to make you not look stupid. I love it. There's a little blurb, and I'll dig it out. But there's this editor from Baltimore Sun, I think he's from, and he has this whole thing about what the different editors do, and it's so funny to listen to it, because right at the end he says, at the end of the day, the editor's main job is to make sure that you don't look like an ass when in public. That is our job.
At least on paper.
At least on paper, yes. Basically, our job is to take your writing and make sure that the mistakes that could easily be fixed have been fixed, and you don't look stupid. Because you're not stupid. You're very intelligent people. You've written a book.
Judy,
Let's put it like it is.
back to what a copy editor is.
Okay, so
And
a copy editor.
And when would you use a line editor?
Okay, a copy editor, their job is to take language. They look at everything at the sentence and language level. So punctuation, grammar, that's a copy editor's job. Wording choices, that's a copy editor's job. If you've got any sentences that are really awkward and really sticky, and they just like, ooh, that didn't read nicely, their job is to look at that sentence and potentially rework it and suggest a rewrite to smooth it out. A copy editor will also look at consistency. So say, for example, your character has got blue eyes in the beginning, but suddenly they've got green eyes at the end. Unless there is a reason for that change, we need to be consistent. They will also look for things like the spelling of character names or place names, those sorts of things. They will look for the consistency and make sure that's all the way there. Developmental editors a little bit before that stage. Line editors. Okay. This is the interesting thing, because everyone in the editing community cannot agree on what a line editor is. Because some people will say what I just described as a copy editor, they'll say that's a line editor. Where I'm of the view that a line editor is a person who looks at everything line by line, and they're looking at the language choices, they're looking at the way it's presented, but they will attack it depending on whether they're coming from a copy editing perspective or from a developmental editing perspective. So when I'm doing things like a substantive line edit, I will look at things like, does this dialogue flow from character to character? Does this accent work on this character? Are we getting accent in on our language? Are we doing show versus tell? Is there another way that we can potentially do that? Those are the sorts of things that I'm looking at. But a copy editor would look at it more like the wording choices. Yeah, they might look at the accent and whether accent's coming through, but they won't look at it in the same way as I am. Does that make sense? I hope it does. In terms of what stage of editing, it depends on where you're talking about. The way you want to do editing in general is you want to do it large scale and then work your way down. So the first stage of your editing is always going to be story and plot. Are we getting the right story? Are we even telling the story that we want to tell? Or did we deviate and we're no longer happy with this story? So we need to look at the story and plot first. And then we need to think about character. Are we doing characterization? Have we got all the beat points that we want? Is it pacing along at an okay rate? And then we start delving it down, scenes,
One
to
question
chapter,
before you
language.
go
Yes?
too far. What if you're a pantser and you didn't tell the story you set out to tell, but you like the story you ended up with?
That's great. That is fantastic.
Okay,
Yeah.
so as long as you like what's on the finished page.
Yeah, and I've had that happen before. Like I had intended to write a story one direction, but when I got there, I went, huh, okay, let's go with it, and I just went with it, and that actually was a story that cloning suddenly found the page. I had no intention of putting science fiction in the story at all, and the next thing I know, cloning is in this manuscript, and I was like, huh, okay. Go with it. And I love that story. I love the way it came out. At the end of the day, that's when you're looking at plot. It's like, do you like what you wrote? Because if you don't, no one else is going to like it either. You have to be happy with what you've got. You look at your wording choices at the next tier after you've done your broad strokes, and you look at the punctuation and grammar last. It is the last thing you look at. Does that make sense?
So if your chapters are out of order, you would put those in place before you worry about the fight scene between the husband and wife.
Yeah, I would.
Make sure all your chapters are in the right order so that the story reads properly.
Yeah.
And then
The
worry about
reason why,
the dialogue between the husband and wife.
The reason why that fight scene, if you've already got the fight scene, fantastic. But I call it a top and tail edit. So it is one of my mid-level edits that I will do, that I look at how I'm progressing from one chapter and into the next. So I will look at the endings and the beginnings. I call it top and tailing, because that has to have a progressive feel to it. It has to naturally go from one chapter to the next. And if it doesn't, then you need to work on it. And that is a large scale thing. But if you are looking at the top and tailing, but then you move a chapter, guess what? You got to go back and take a look at that top and tail, because you moved a chapter. The connection may no longer connect. Does that make sense? We all good? Okay. Right. There were some other questions that are floating around, and I can't seem to see.
There's one for later that says, what are some things you wish writers knew when they hand a manuscript to you? And I know your biggest pet peeve, preparing for lecture. Although I'm not.
Tell me what my biggest pet peeve are, because I have a few of them.
What I hear the most is standard manuscript format, standard manuscript format, standard manuscript format.
Yeah, okay. So,
and no rainbow colored manuscripts.
Oh, please, no rainbow colors. Okay. So standard manuscript format is something that you need to be aware of if you are, particularly if you're heading down the road of traditional publication. If you're not heading down the road of traditional publication, it's not so important, but editors do have a particular format that they like to work in. The reason that this format exists is because of the old historic ways of doing editing and book. And what the standard manuscript format is, for anyone who doesn't know what it is 12 point. It used to be in Courier New, but you can now get away using Times New Roman or Arial. Times New Roman's more common, but you can use any of those three fonts. But it's definitely 12 point. It is double spaced, 1-inch margins all around the page. Traditionally, it's on letter paper, but I know whenever I get a manuscript in, the first thing I have to do to it is change it to A4 paper because I can't get letter paper in New Zealand. So, but that's a different situation. And you also have 1/2 inch first line indentation on all of your paragraphs. You can get away with not doing it on your first paragraph in every chapter, but I'm called lazy. And I don't bother with that until they tell me that I have to worry about it because it's too hard to change it. And it's just easier to say, nah, just use this on all paragraphs and just go with that. The reason it's that way, the reason it's that very fixed format is because, one, it gives us room to make notes if we print it out, which some editors do, some editors don't. Now that we've moved to digital, it's not so critical that we do, but in the past we had to because everything was posted around the world. Internet didn't exist, not when the formats were first made. But the other important aspect to it is that that particular format has got approximately 250 words a page. So when we're quoting on a job, when that manuscript has got, say, 400 pages in it, and it's using standard manuscript format, then we know that that manuscript is roughly 100,000 words. It's a very easy calculation, and it tells us how far we're going.
There's one thing you left out of that, black font.
Yes, no rainbow colors, please.
And for those of you using Scrivener, particularly either the beta or the Mac, there is something called revision mode. Now, your compile settings, if applied properly, will strip this in the Mac version. The beta still sneaks it through once in a while. So all I do when I'm preparing something, and yes, full disclosure, Judy is my editor. When I'm preparing something, especially for Judy, I do a Control-A and apply black. It's already in the Times New Roman. It's already a 12-point font. It's already double-spaced. It already has the 1-inch margins. I just do a Control-A and make sure all the text is black before I send it to her.
Because I get grumpy.
Now, yes, I have another editor that I use who, if it's a second pass on a chapter just to see if what I'm working on is working, actually likes the text color change, but the only color I use is blue. So I'm not using blue, green, yellow, orange, purple, but that's that specific editor's preference.
Yeah.
And I've only asked Judy to look at text for 2 paragraphs that had blue in it. I was like, listen, just read over this real quick because I'm setting it back to editor B. She knows about my other editor. In fact, I introduced her to my other editor, and
yeah, and I use them too. So there we go.
But like I said, that's only for that one specific purpose. If it's, hey, can you just quick make sure this is headed in the right direction, I will leave the blue in for him.
Right, so moving away from rainbow text. Other things that I wish writers knew is just don't be afraid to use your beta readers and your critique partners. Don't be afraid. It's getting feedback in general is hard. It is really, really hard. This is our baby, and someone didn't like our baby. I have had comments that have come back that have made me angry. Absolutely, utterly angry, because I'm like, this person seriously just did not get it. But you have to step back and go, they're not attacking you. They're not attacking your writing. They're just not understanding something about your writing, and they're highlighting an issue. It is your job as a writer to work out exactly what the issue is that they're highlighting and how to fix it. The diagnosis that they've given you might not be right. It may be completely wrong. And that goes for if you're working with editors as well. If somebody tells you, if an editor tells you, well, you need to fix your writing by doing X, Y, or Z, the diagnosis can be completely wrong. But they're highlighting an issue, something that you need to figure out.
Judy, that being said, since you're talking about advice writers have given clients, I had a question that was sent to me to be asked anonymously. Warning, are you ready for this one? It is.
Yes.
I actually warned Judy about this question and told it to her in advance. This person got back from a professional editor the following comment: your writing sucks. You need to give it up and find a new hobby. It was all I could do to keep her from like punching something, and I'm half a world away. So a bit of a challenge.
Instant response to that is, who was the editor so I can kill them? Because maybe a professional editor should never, ever say something like that. For one, it's unprofessional. It really is unprofessional. Yeah, somebody's commented saying that is rude. Exactly. It is incredibly rude.
And that's why I wanted to get Judy's reaction to it in the video, so that person, whoever they are,
it's not, that is not the right thing. Okay, so here's the way I see it. Think about a child, a 6-year-old. If you have actually sat down and spoken to a 6-year-old and they tell you a story, that story is incredibly entertaining, especially how they become so animated and the ideas just go in so many different directions. And you're just like, whoa, I am tripping out here. This is like so cool of a story. But that 6-year-old is never going to be in a position where they can write a publishable story because they haven't learned how to write. They haven't learned how to make a proper sentence. They haven't learned about using metaphors and descriptions. They haven't learned about how to formulate dialogue. They haven't learned any of that. But that story from a 6-year-old is amazing. You just have to giggle and laugh, and you just love it. That is the reality. You can learn how to write. You can learn how to construct a sentence. You can learn about show versus tell. You can learn about dialogue. You can learn all of that. But the only thing you cannot learn is how to use your imagination. That is something that's natural. That's using your imagination. And the 6-year-old has got it down. So for somebody to turn around and say that the writing is like, give up your hobby. No, I'm sorry. No. I can imagine, though, a professional editor coming back to you and saying, I don't think your writing is ready for this. That I can imagine them saying. And I could, because quite a few of the editors that I work with will actually go through and say, I don't think it's ready. Perhaps, maybe if you go and hire a writing coach, or if you hire a developmental editor, maybe they can help you through this process. I don't think you're ready for this. And that's it is a different way of doing things. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yes.
Cool. And so we're seeing all these yeses, which is great. No, that's fantastic. Now, sorry, whoever that editor was, can I strangle them?
I was not given the name.
God, no. That's just not on. That's not on. Yeah. Sorry, that's my view.
And someone in the comments said that they should be disbarred, even though that's a term for lawyers, just for lack of a better term. And
Well,
someone else.
okay, since we're talking about the disbar or the things, I because I'm a professional editor, I'm probably in the best position to actually explain this. In Australia and in the UK, editors actually do have a process that we have to, if we want to become a certified or an accredited editor, we have tests that we have to do. We have hoops that we have to jump through. American editors don't. And that is an interesting thing to note, because to be an editor in the US, to be a professional editor in the US and be a member of one of their editorial societies at a professional level, you don't need anything. You do not need a qualification. You don't even need experience. You can just get there. And that is an interesting thing. Trying to find an editor who is qualified and has actually got the chops to do the job, the best way to do that is ask. Literally, ask. Ask your writing friends, ask your writing buddies, who would they recommend? Do they know of anybody that they would recommend? Is there anyone that they would trust and that they would say, hey, you might be interested? Coming from the UK, if you are looking for a UK editor, you want to go to the CEIP. So that's the, can I remember what it stands for? It used to be CEFI, so it used to be the SFEP. So, and they've recently changed their names. CEIP. I cannot remember off the top of my head what they stand for. It's because they recently, and as of last year, it was about September last year, they became a chartered society. And it's like engineers, okay, or for that matter, so engineers. If you want to be a practicing engineer, you have to achieve a certain level of standard and prove that you are capable. And that's what being a chartered engineer, editor is
Faster
like.
than myself on Google said, are you talking about the Chartered Institute of Editing and Proofreading?
Yes, I am, and because they're UK based. So, and that's the one. So thank you, whoever that was.
And
Kitty.
that would be Kitty.
You. In Australia, it's the Institute of Professional Editors, and they now have a New Zealand branch, and we are working really hard in New Zealand to actually encourage all editors to become members of the IPED, which is the Institute of Professional Editors, because we have to jump through hoops. We have to prove that we can do the job. And I have proved that I can do the job. So I have professional membership. I've done it. But you don't have to do that for American societies, which is really disturbing. And I think that's probably the issue.
Anyone wanting to verify this information, it is on Black Wolf editorial in the About Us section. I will put a link to it in the chat because one person said, show me the credentialing. And I'm like, okay, best way I can do it is put a link in chat. So
yeah,
because I'm not going to try and share screen and go all crazy.
Because I've got a little badge that says professional member, and in iPad you have to have, there's multiple different tiers. You have a student editor, so they're doing an editorial course, and then you have an affiliate editor, so they've done it, but they haven't got the professional background. They haven't actually done the work. They haven't done the hours. And then you have the professional editor, who has done the hours. And then you have another tier above that, which is your accredited editor. Now, I'm not an accredited editor. That I'm not done because I haven't done the exams. And I have no intention of doing the exams. But that's for a different reason. That's because I'm not a copy editor. And those exams are for copy editors. And I would fail because I'm not a copy editor.
But you do find all of my misplaced commas, or at least the majority.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
I can't place a comma to save my life.
Now, I'm just seeing a comment here from Emilu. Thank you, Em, saying it's also important to find a development editor who works in your genre. Yes, that is so true. So the work I work with is thriller based. I tend to be action stories. I love my action stories. Now, those action stories could be in fantasy, science fiction, thriller, horror, those sorts of things. I do not work with romance unless the romance is either a paranormal romance or a romantic suspense. And in both of those cases, there tends to be action involved because I love my action stories. I love them. But when it comes to something like a sweet contemporary romance, which is what Em writes, and I know she writes that, I'm not the girl to go to because I can tell you whether the story is engaging and I can tell you whether it hits all the beat points, but I can't tell you if it's getting the right trope or whether it's hitting the right notes. There was one of the other writers that we work with in Oh Dark. She writes Christian fiction. And there was this one slang term that she was using and thought it was perfectly okay. She went to a Christian fiction editor and they came back and said, no, it's not okay. And all the rest of us in the room were like, really? Oh, okay. But
now, that being said, Judy could not edit your sweet romance. But if you have her as a critique partner, A, count your blessings, and B, she could critique it from is there enough show versus tell? She won't know if you've hit the trope points for the romance story, but she can tell you if there's show versus tell, if there's a he said, she said best. She can still tell you all that. But from a developmental editor perspective, she is the wrong person. From a critique partner standpoint or a beta reader, she's overqualified for beta reader, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, and I have, so if people are writing, say, literary fiction, I've actually referred them to somebody else. So literary fiction, for anybody who's going, what actually is literary fiction? Because so there are three terms that come up frequently that people go, huh? Literary, upmarket, commercial. Everyone goes, huh? Commercial fiction is your genre fiction. So thrillers, romance, mystery, your westerns, comedy, all of those are commercial fiction. And the reason why they're called commercial is because they're the primary market. They're the ones that make the money. Then you have literary fiction, which tends to, the best way to describe literary fiction is that it's writing that is written to draw attention to the writing itself. Because commercial fiction is writing that is written to draw attention to the story. Well-written commercial fiction, the writing disappears and it just becomes the story. Literary fiction, you focus on the writing. So you see the metaphors, you see the rhyme, you see the way the language is constructed. Upmarket is a blend between the two. So it's genre fiction that's written in literary style. Don't you love the terms?
Judy, let's play Classify That Author.
Okay, classify that author. Here we go.
Okay, Brandon Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson is commercial fiction. He writes fantasy, high fantasy in particular, but he also does YA, because he's got a YA series that is heist.
He is all in the commercial fiction.
He is commercial fiction, and he also writes heists in particular as well. He does a lot of heists.
Okay, my favorite, Brad Thor.
Commercial fiction, thriller.
I know, you're gritting your teeth going, grrr.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Brad Thor. Sorry.
That's okay. Oh, I can't think of the name. The Lady Astronaut series.
Mary Robinette Kowal. Okay, so Mary Robinette Kowal is science fiction. She actually writes alternate histories. She also writes fantasy, but she is upmarket. She's commercial, yes, but she has literary devices in her writing. She's upmarket. But because she is very much grounded upmarket, she is more commercial.
Okay. Andy Weir, The Martian.
Commercial, hard science fiction. And the difference between hard science fiction and soft science fiction is that hard science fiction, you need the technical details. It goes really in depth into the science, and that's what makes it hard science fiction. Oh, we're seeing a few others. Right, Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood is upmarket. She is more literary than she is commercial, but she still writes commercial. Lane Mortuary. I don't know that one. Oh my gosh, I don't know that one at all. Sorry.
What about Carolyn B. Cooney?
I don't know that name either. Sorry.
If the writing is flowery and ornate, it's going to be literary. If it's your basic genre,
no, it doesn't.
correct.
No, I'll disagree with that. If it's flowery and ornate, it's probably overwritten purple prose. And purple prose is just a term that we use for anything that's over ornate.
Big Little Lies.
Okay. Most of the things, so if we're thinking Big Little Lies is probably more upmarket. If I think Erin Morgenstern, The Night Circus, that is upmarket. Because
George Orwell.
it was, yeah, well, hang on, The Night Circus. It was not flowery, but it is definitely literary because she was using omniscient voice, which is very rare nowadays in commercial fiction, and she was using second person, which is not something you see in fiction. It was so that's the thing, is literary tends to pull on different devices and you see the writing. You actually see it. George Orwell would have been commercial in his day. So was Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was commercial in his day. if that makes any sense.
So at the time it was written, it was considered commercial fiction. Its classification may have changed by today's standards.
By today's standards, it
You are
probably
saying.
has changed, yeah.
Um,
Okay, a lot of these other authors, I'm sorry guys, I don't know lots of authors out there, and
I picked on ones I knew she'd know, so that's why she was
all right,
able to get mine so fast.
so
Jane Austen.
Jane Austen is commercial, or at least was. Would I consider her commercial today? Don't know. The Bronte sisters were upmarket / literary. Does that make sense?
Dante.
Okay,
I'll get.
no more. we're gonna move on from that because I'm only making a fool of myself here because I do not know all these names. The reality is there are so many people out there, so many authors out there, and
Nobody can know them all.
nobody can know everyone. If they
But I
do,
wanted to
then they're not a writer.
illustrate a few that I knew she would know, by just to illustrate.
Yeah.
Some of it.
I personally prefer commercial fiction. I'm not a big fan of literary or upmarket.
Except you enjoyed The Night Circus.
No, I did not.
Oh, sorry. You read it.
I've read it, but I did not like it.
Okay.
I wanted to like it, but I didn't like it.
Sorry, I thought you did.
No, didn't like it.
But I knew you read it.
All right.
Okay, so now that we've sorted out commercial, literary, upmarket, what are some, if you hire another editor or get a critique back that has the words purple prose, has the words too much exposition, and has the words show don't tell, can you explain those very common terms?
Okay, purple
We've already done
prose.
show versus tell, sort of, but we'll save it for last.
Purple prose is overly ornate language or overly ornate passage. So, say for example, you have a gilded mirror. If you were going to go into purple prose, you would start talking about how the gold leaf was delicately draped and all the carvings were done of various different aspects to it. Now, that may not seem like a lot of detail, but depending on the circumstances, it can be over the top. Another example, and a very common one used when they're talking about purple prose, is actually from Twilight. When in the scene where Bella first learns about Edward being a sparkly vampire, there's a paragraph where within the paragraph we have 5 different ways of saying that he was a sparkly vampire with lots of diamonds in his skin, all within a span of about 7 lines. 5 different ways of saying it. It's like, seriously? We did not need that. That was not necessary. The reason why it's called purple prose is because purple historically was the royal color, and they were over the top with some of the things they did. And that's where the term comes from. Exposition is anything that is not dialogue.
So 5 chapters of backstory all together in the front of my manuscript?
Yeah, it's your backstory, it's your prose that's in between your dialogue, it's the details of your scenes, it's all of that. Everything that's not dialogue is exposition. When they say it's excessive exposition or too much exposition, what they're meaning is that you've gone into too much backstory, you have too much detail given, you've realmed into purple prose. That's what they're meaning. The show versus tell. So the general is, so we're dealing with, say, I've got a sad. My character's sad. You don't say they're sad. You say their shoulders droop, their eyes were glassy with tears, their face was downturned, they were moping, those sorts of things. How far you go with the show will depend on the genre. Because some genres want more than others. I see a message here reminding me about the emotional thesaurus. So yeah, I'm going to bring that out.
Yes. Do you have your copy handy, or do
I
need
got
to
my
grab it?
copy handy. All right, so this book here, The Emotion Thesaurus, written by Angela Ackerman and Becca Basigi. See if I can bring it up without it disappearing. Yes, I can. Woohoo! Okay, this book here is really, really awesome because what it does is it shows very quickly in a list of details what you can have. So I just opened it up. I just opened it random. Anticipation. The physical signs of anticipation. Sweaty palms, trembling hands, crossing and uncrossing legs, frantic planning of an event, list making, bouncing on one's toes, fussing with clothes and rearranging things, jittery on
I'm
a
going to
foot
do one
against
better,
the floor.
Judy. I pulled
Oh,
it up
you're
at
going to
Kindle.
share it.
Yes.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
I am going to make the
Yeah.
font just a little bit smaller here.
That is fantastic. So this is the sort of entry that you get in the Emotion Thesaurus. And it really is just, here's the details, here's the physical signs, internal sensations, mental responses. As a writer, this doesn't tell me what I need to do with it. It is 100% up to me what to do with this
And then in the
information.
second edition, they went to may escalate to, may de-escalate
De-escalate to. Yeah. And that
then
was
they
an
put in the
awesome
power
thing.
verbs.
Yeah.
So we're going to just jump over to excitement. And yes, the Kindle version is cross-linked. Yes, I have these books in hard copy and Kindle. I don't leave home without them, ever.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't ever go anywhere without my
See
copies
Judy
of the
at a
Emotion
coffee
Thesaurus.
shop for something writing, and I can guarantee you she will have it.
I'll
Ask
have it
to
with
see
me.
it. But
Yeah.
here's excitement. You know, wide grin, eyes that sparkle, bouncing from one foot to the other.
Okay.
You get the idea.
Okay.
Am I good to
We
stop
can
sharing?
probably stop screen sharing. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we have somebody. When do you use those? Okay, so I use them. I use my copy when I'm drafting. I also use it when I'm editing. I also use it when I'm editing a client's work. I also use it when I'm in that final modes of, every single stage. And I use it all the time. Sometimes I will pull it out when I'm looking at something. Somebody may have pointed out that my characters tend to roll their eyes a lot. And unfortunately they do. I have this fascination with eyes. And my characters seem to breathe a lot too. I have a lot of breathing. At least I know they're not going to fall over and go blue in the face, but they seem to breathe a lot. And I'm looking at all of these things and going, well, she's feeling this emotion in this moment. How else can I describe that? And so I use it at all the points. And sometimes I'm using it when I'm drafting. I'm like, okay, I know I'm using this a lot. I need to come up with something else. But dare I say it, in terms of using things a lot, sometimes you can hang a lantern on it. So I have one of my characters, he does this a lot. He's constantly doing this thing. And I have one of my characters turn around and say, you do that a lot. Do we need to have a conversation about this? And then I left it like that because I couldn't be bothered changing it, to put it blunt. That's why it was like that. It was my editor came back and said, your character's doing this a lot. You need to change this. And I went, no, I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to have my other character point out the fact that he's doing this a lot. That's my cheat method, but it worked. And it
We're
worked
seeing a
well.
lot of people saying the various things that they do in their writing about it. One person says, mine are always smiling even when things aren't happy. Uh,
Yeah.
another one says they write messages to their family with humphs in them. And someone else says they have a lot of glances, wry chuckles, insert eye roll here. And another one says it just means a moment to think, I think.
Yeah, there's so many different things. And those books are really good for that because that's what they're designed for. They're designed to help you show your worlds and make it easier. The emotion thesaurus is good for the show of the emotion, obviously, but then there's some other ones that are good for character development and working out those sort of aspects. So they're really good things.
Okay, Judy, why don't you wrap up and summarize? And I'm going to pull up a website you sent me earlier. I think we can end the recording.
Okay, so to wrap up and summarize, what am I wrapping up and summarizing?
Uh, what steps you made a list earlier? Remember
Oh,
we talked
yes,
about
I
this.
did. Okay, so thank you. It's this time of
And
day.
you wonder why she keeps me around. Your chuckle buddy is here again.
Oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and my brain is already shutting down. Right. So I had written down when I'm doing my developmental edits, and this is with the client's edits as well as my own personal edits, I have a sort of like a checklist, a list of things that I look for. The first thing I'm doing when I'm doing my own stuff is it's got to sit in that metaphorical drawer. I need my distance. I need a minimum of 2 weeks, ideally more. I try to aim for 2 months, but sometimes you just don't have 2 months, and that's that. In terms of where to go from there, I look at the plot and characterization, and I'm looking at, is this the story I want to tell? Is it all there? Do I actually have all the story? Is some of it missing? Am I racing through to the finish? Because sometimes that can happen, is that you're racing to the end and racing to the finish line and you miss writing the ending. And that can sometimes happen as well. Then I look at my dialogue. Does my dialogue feel natural? Am I using, in my first drafts, I have what I know affectionately known as a he said, she said fest. So I have a lot of he said, she said, he said, she said, they said. I have a lot of that, but that's my first drafts. And I will work that out and get rid of those during my edits because they're not good, not in an audio sense. And it's, do I want the action? And it's like, I need to put action around my dialogue. Do I have the show versus tell? Do I have POV consistency? Am I head hopping? Head hopping, not good. Head hopping, bad. Bad news,
Why is
bad.
head hopping not good?
It gives you whiplash. When you're
But I
reading
mean,
it,
what is head
you've
hopping?
got no idea whose head you're in. And head hopping is not a good thing from that perspective. It's a bit hard to explain and a bit hard to see, but once you see it, you know it because you are struggling to keep track as to where you are. And it's not good. I also have on my checklist 3 readers. 3 readers that I trust. They're writers and they are commenting. If all 3 of those writers come back and they go, wow, that was awesome, then I know I'm actually finished with my developmental edits and I can move into my next phase.
How did you know one writer was so hit by one of your endings that had a death in it?
Okay, so one of my manuscripts, one of my stories, I have this scene where I have this big battle at the end between my main character and the main antagonist, and she kills the antagonist. Yay, go, woman power, yeah, bring it on. But during the battle, the love interest gets hurt badly and fatally, and he dies. Spoiler alert, I don't write romance. Sorry, guys. My characters die. And I had a beta reader come back to me and try to tell me how to rewrite my ending so the love interest survives. She spent 3 days telling me how to rewrite my ending so the love interest didn't die. And in the end, I decided I had the perfect ending because she wouldn't have cared if I didn't have the right emotional engagement. And for the genre that I write, the love interest dies. Sorry. That's what happens. It's a common trope and it's used. The love interest dies. But I knew I had it right when I had 2 other writers come back to me and say they were bawling their eyes out and could not stop crying, and I was so cruel, but yet there was no other way to end that story. So I know I've got the ending right.
Okay. We have you finished your list of editing?
Yeah, that was it. Number 3.
Okay.
Yeah, that 3.
Judy, why don't you give your blog and all that information before we kill the recording?
Too late. I've already killed mine, but that's okay.
Mine's still going.
Okay, yours is still going. Oh gosh, this is wonderful. Thanks. So for those who want to keep track of me, you can find out more information through blackwolfeditorial.com. I'm also on Facebook with Black Wolf Editorial, and I'm on the Twitter, which is blackwolf_ed. But of course, my personal channels are all Judy L Mohr, and you can find me everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course my website is judylmohr.com. So I'm not that hard to find, I hope. Okay.
Thank you, Judy. We are going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
And if everybody
and bye for the YouTube people. Bye YouTube.